Hello there guys, what is going on? It's Monday, back here again for another episode of Added Time, answering your questions that you kindly submitted for today's show. Apologies once again to those I can't get to in today's episode, but thank you for all of you for submitting those questions. And I think I've been doing Added Time for about a year on the channel. Really pleased with the interaction with it on a weekly basis from you guys. It makes the show worth doing, and it's wonderful to have you guys so engaged with the channel, answering questions, interesting questions that I can delve into on this show. So we're going to get into that once again today. And also international break, of course. I'm actually not that fussed about the international break. It's been so intense this season. I think it's the right time for a break. And I think the fact that we do have an international tournament, there's a question on the Euros coming up on the show today. I'm actually not that fussed about this international break. I actually quite like it. A little bit of a rest from Premier League and Champions League football. It's going to get more intense as we get into the final weeks of Chelsea season, which could be pretty remarkable. So make sure you don't miss any of the stuff on the channel. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and notification bell. Despite it being the international break, still got news videos coming up, collabs and other stuff too. Hit that like button as well because it helps out the channel too. But let's get into your questions. Firstly, here from my great sponsor Lucid FC. Do you have any Euro 2020 predictions at the moment? In terms of favourites, I think I'm looking towards France. Of course, won the World Cup, made the Euro 2016 final. The quality of their squad is just ridiculous. And it's not even their first squad that they announced recently for the current internationals. It's their under-23 squad as well. The talent coming through in France at the moment is just absolutely astonishing. So I think for the future as well, it doesn't always work out like this, but I think they're looking really strong. Germany, I think the fact that it's Joachim Löw's last tournament as Germany's head coach, and seeing where they go beyond that, given how important he's been for Germany as their national head coach. Hopefully, for him, I think he's going to want to go out on a strong note. But seeing how Germany sort of adapt, because they have struggled in the last two major tournaments. England, of course, seeing how we do with Gareth Southgate, the optimism around World Cup 2018, seeing us get to a semi-final. There was so much hope around the squad, but I think given the way, was it the Nations League, wasn't it, recently, that didn't go that well for Gareth Southgate, and I think there's more question marks around that. But we do have a very talented squad with players from Chelsea involved, which I think makes you more engaged than we have been in recent years, seeing the likes of Mason Mount, Reece James featuring. Callum Hudson-Odoi maybe could make that squad if he has a good end to the season, not currently in the first squad, but all those players too being involved I think is a big help for Chelsea, and just seeing where we go. So I think it's going to be an exciting tournament. The one firm prediction I will make that I think I'm pretty confident of making is I think it's going to be a more defensive, counter-attacking tournament. I think the level of fatigue and tiredness of some of these players, I think, is going to make the quality of football not that great. I have to be honest, I think it's going to be quite a defensive tournament. I just think the amount of football these players have played over the last year with, Project Restart last year, not only in the Premier League with many players from the Premier League featuring in this tournament, but I just think in the major leagues as well, it's going to be really tough. So I think it's not going to be the greatest tournament in terms of quality, but let's hope some of the big players show up and we get some interesting results as well. So those are my thoughts on the Euros. RJ asks, what did you make of Tuchel's starting 11 and in-game changes? So he made a lot of changes yesterday. As we know now, he makes changes every game, but I think the level of changes, 9 changes, which I checked was the most amount of changes he's made from one game to another in his starting lineup since Barnsley. That was the last time he made as many changes. And you think about that Barnsley game too, we lacked rhythm, we lacked cohesion, we probably looked in most danger of conceding in that game, and it was quite similar against Sheffield United as well. I just think, it's weird because some of the rotation, I can't say the rotation disrupted in certain areas. Like Christensen has been a big player for Chelsea in recent months, despite not playing against Atletico because of illness. He's still a big player. There were several regular starters within that 11, but I just think we lack that rhythm, we lack that cohesion. I do wonder as well, I didn't mention this in my review yesterday, but the fact we did play a very intense Champions League game on Wednesday, how much that would have taken out the squad, certain players emotionally, mentally, physically as well. I just think that probably was always going to be difficult to sort of balance that and even reach the levels. And Sheffield United were trying to be very disruptive, especially in the first half. I thought the referee had a very terrible game in terms of not penalising and showing more yellows to Sheffield United players when they especially were kicking Christian Pulisic on a regular basis. So I felt it was going to be tough, but I think Tuchel got away with it in the end. Another clean sheet, 2-0 win. We're through to the semi-final to face Man City, which is going to be a massive test. In terms of the changes, I don't think a lot of them actually... I think one of them majorly worked out with Hakim Ziyech scoring once again. I think some of them, though, didn't quite have the desired effect of gaining control in the game when Chelsea were losing it. Christensen going off, which I wonder is something to do with his fitness or sort of illness in the recent days, only getting an hour's football and maybe just needing to give him a rest. I don't think that had the desired effect. Reece James didn't really stop Osborne on that left side and stop sort of the attacking intent of Sheffield United. N'Golo Kante and Ziyech are probably, and HAVERTZ too, are probably the three subs to me that made the biggest impact when they came on, adding that control and fluidity and eventually killing off the game in added time. So in the end, it works out. Everything's going right for Tuchel at the moment, so you can't have too many complaints. King Luther asked, do you think the performance during this game was as a result of the changes or Sheffield United actually having a strategy against Chelsea? I think a bit of both. I think the amount of changes, as I said in my previous answer, I think the lack of fluidity in our attacking play, especially the way we progressed the ball. It was difficult because this was sort of Sheffield United's big cup final, basically, at this point. They're going to get relegated from the Premier League. You could see they came in, especially after losing 5-0 and losing so terribly last week against Leicester. They weren't going to allow that to happen again. And I think the way they pressed us late on, they were trying to get that goal, probably deserved that goal. And somehow McGoldrick missed that golden opportunity. I do think there is maybe a concern of the way we're struggling to break down teams, or at least lesser teams. And I do have a question, I think, about this coming up. I think is something to be concerned by, just in the sense that we do have some of those teams coming up in the Premier League in key fixtures that Chelsea have to win. I think draws are going to be quite terrible at this stage of the season. So you have to be concerned about that. But I think Chelsea generally just getting the job done, those fine margins in the game, offensively and defensively, are going in Chelsea's favour at the moment. And hopefully that continues. And really at this point of the season, it's about results. It's about Chelsea getting over the line when it matters most. In terms of those all-round perfect performance with the pressure, the scrutiny, the intensity. It's all about Chelsea just getting a job done weekly, which is what they're doing at the moment under Thomas Tuchel. Liam asked, we've got a glimpse of Mount in the double pivot. Do you see his best position here in the long run, or will Tuchel continue to play him in the front three? I think the great thing about Mason Mount, as we've seen in his career already, he's an incredibly versatile player that can be reliable in a number of positions. I think this season in particular, he started the season actually in a 4-2-3-1, actually on the right under Lampard, which I don't think is his best position, but he started there. Then he moved back to a number 8 position, which himself, he said he prefers to be a natural number 8. And he played there for a long period of time and really gained form over the season. And then moved, say, to this sort of roaming 10 position just behind a striker on the left or the right. We've seen him sort of move and sort of switch between left and right depending on who's in that front three with him. I think in all of those roles he succeeded. I think, in terms of what he gives to the team, you want him in the team pretty consistently. He's been such a brilliant player for Chelsea. I think he will win Player of the Season, despite some really good performers under Tuchel recently. I think, to be fair, of the whole season, judging the whole season, Mason's versatility is so key, and you need those players, but it's his quality as well. And I think Tuchel's probably looked at him and gone, can we improve his finishing in the final third? Can we get him closer to goal? Can we add more goals to his game? And we've seen under Tuchel that's really helped him, in sort of that roaming 10 position. He has to get in front of the goal a lot more. He has to take more shots on goal. We saw the brilliant finish against Liverpool. We saw him score against Sheffield United as well. I think in that position he can be very effective. I think currently with the two, I'm not quite sure. I think you need to balance that midfield out. I wasn't quite convinced with Mount and Cover as that midfield too. I think it didn't really help us in terms of control. You have two quite offensive players there. I think you maybe need a Kante or Georgie next to him in that position to really balance it out. So it could work in that sense, especially if Ziyech, HAVERTZ and Werner pick up form, and maybe you want Mount in this team somewhere. And Tuchel is rotating pretty liberally at the moment, so it's tough to know exactly what team is always going to be fielded. But Mason has done so well this season. I can't really nail down what his best position is, and that's not a negative. I think for me, he's done so well in a number of positions, and I just back this guy, as we've seen in the evidence of this season. Whoever comes in, whatever the changes are, Mount will be a regular starter at Chelsea Football Club. DJMC asked, does Chelsea work better with a false 9 at the moment? It seems to be at the moment, mate. I think I have to agree with you on that front, and I've been saying this for quite a while. I just think it's on the evidence of what I see with the possession sort of controlled nature of the way Chelsea play. I think having a focal point, not a natural focal point, having quite a fluid front three, which a guy like Olivier Giroud, for all his strengths and what he's done so well for Chelsea, doesn't give you. You can't hit the ball over the top for him to run onto to stretch defences like you can with Timo Werner and Kai Havertz. I think teams have really struggled to deal with the movement of that front three when it isn't including, say, a Giroud or Tammy Abraham. I think we've seen with Kai, Timo, Ziyech, I think especially against Atletico Madrid, they struggled to deal with that. I think Everton too, and I think the evidence of sort of trying to break down low blocks against Chelsea, I think that actually looks a lot better. I think Kai Havertz in particular is starting to look like more of an influential player in our attack. He seems to be someone that's linking play, dropping back deeper, switching from left to right. I think that's really helping Chelsea and really making it a struggle for defences to pick him up in particular. I think when you're playing Giroud, it's very obvious what Giroud's game is, and we aren't really playing to his strengths at the moment. So if you're not playing to a player's strengths, I mean, he's going to struggle, and it's quite clear what Giroud excels at. It's getting the ball to his feet, it's getting more crosses into the box, and unfortunately Chelsea aren't really doing that as much on a Tuchel. It's much more about control, and we didn't really do that yesterday, so he's struggling to really find his form and confidence. And with Kai, Ziyech now coming back into form, Timo having a really good game against Atletico, Mason looking good in that front three as well, I just think at the moment I'm going to go for that sort of three over sort of the natural forward. What that means for Giroud and Tammy, we'll have to wait and see, but I do agree with you on that point, and I think Tuchel will continue to use it in the most important games. And finally, Manhandled CFC are sort of going with a general topic here of what's your solution for playing against the so-called weaker teams after the break. We've struggled to break teams down when they've sat back. This has been an issue in some games. It hasn't been an issue in other games. If you think about Tuchel's early games as Chelsea's head coach against the likes of Burnley, Newcastle, I know Newcastle have been really poor recently, but some of those games, Sheffield United as well, Chelsea have found the right answers at the right moment. I'd even argue, Tottenham in some way tried to play a low block against us, and once again playing a more fluid front three really helped us on that night to break them down. I think I'm not as sort of pessimistic about this as some people are. I know, there was some concern yesterday, once again, Chelsea's level of performance and saying, we got lucky with the own goal. But, Chelsea still got the job done in the end. So I think you have to be confident about that. Defensively, I think we have to be confident with this team at the moment. They're limiting chances, which in games like that is going to allow Chelsea with the counter press to maintain control of a game a lot more than they have previously. I think that has been the issue of Chelsea losing control as games have gone on that we've been quite dominant in. I think if we continue to use the counter press effectively with some of the key players that Tuchel has used, I think it's going to be hard for teams to get out of our press and get out of their own box, basically get out of their own half to really cause us any issues at the other end. I think Everton was a prime example of this, of Chelsea being able to break down opposition. I just think it's that clinical nature in the final third that Chelsea have been showing in recent games. I mean, we didn't create a lot against Atletico Madrid, but were able to add the finishing touch. Against Brighton, it's interesting with Brighton because they do like to play a more progressive game. I expect more of a low block against Crystal Palace when we come up against them. Fulham, very regimented under Scott Parker recently, so it's going to be difficult. I think there shouldn't be tons of concern about these games. If Chelsea want to get into the top four, if we want to end the season strongly, we have to be putting these teams away. I'm starting to see things with certain performances, not like yesterday when he made so many changes, but more so in the games against Atletico recently, where you can see those players starting to click, and I think there's a lot of talent there to break teams down. So I think it's just about waiting and seeing what happens, to be honest. If this problem persists, then yeah, it is a problem. But I think actually Chelsea against low blocks have been a lot better than they were last season, and that's a cause for optimism in my opinion. But that is it for this episode of Added Time. Thank you guys for watching. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter at SonOfChelsea. Have a great day, and I'll see you again.